Surely you personally know several people who will never switch from iPhones in their lives. I've thought for a long time that this is the power of marketing depending on the ecosystem. And to be honest, the products are good in places. In fact, Apple's secret weapon is iOS, no joke. With all my love for Android, this OS is really cool. And today, I will tell you, with the help of which technologies, Apple gets millions of people hooked on its system. This is Boris Vadinsky for Droider, still using Android, and I have prepared a little investigation for you. Get ready, and let's go. And let's start from not so long ago. Do you remember a project that took off on Kickstarter a few years ago? A bite-sized cube with various buttons, switches, and clickers. This hot item was called the Fidget Cube. Then, the world went crazy for spinners. On the one hand, absolutely useless things. On the other hand, for some reason, it got people hooked for a long time. Many people call it stress relief, but in fact these things somehow deliver tactile pleasure. But what do spinners have to do with it, you ask? The fact is that iOS and its building principles are very close to these toys. And that's what I'm talking about. Let's start with something simpler, gestures. Let's be honest, from the first version, iOS set high standards for communication with the user. It was very responsive, some kind of surprisingly natural or alive compared to other systems. Let's remember, click, click, the windows of those old mobile phones. But with the release of the 10th iPhone and the appearance of new gestures, the system moved to a new level of mutual understanding with the user. How did they do it? Here's the theory. Classical interaction with the interface can be called linear. At first, you thought you wanted to do something, made a decision, clicked somewhere, and then the system answered you. This logic of the interface forces users to calculate all the moves in advance, and sometimes they have to think it over. From the 10th iPhone, the iOS navigation works in parallel with the user's thoughts. For example, you wanted to switch to multitasking mode, but in the process, you changed your mind and decided to close the application. All this can be done without taking your eyes off the screen. At any time, you can change your mind and interrupt the animation, and the quickest of us will be able to use the application while it is just opening. Of course, Android 10 is catching up with these ideas, but iOS set the bar at the time. This principle works especially well on the iPad screen, where there's a lot of room for maneuvering. The system literally guesses what you want to do and plays along with you. Pull to the left, that's multitasking for you. To the right is the neighboring application, and if up, then everything will close. Isn't it beautiful? But if the intuitiveness of gestures is more or less abstract matter, then now let's move on to more visual things. Animations in iOS, scrolling, dragging, even taps on elements are designed so that the user receives a reward for the whole thing. A little reward. Firstly, the movement of the elements is organized according to the principle of a bicycle with an electric drive. You start some kind of finger trajectory across the screen. The system anticipates it, enhancing the movement, and helps to finish. Thus, the interface feels light, tactile, and perfectly debugged like a car that starts with half a turn. And then you say, "You're talking out of your ass, Boris." I'm explaining how it works. For example, each element in the interface has its own, believe me, virtual weight. Therefore, flipping between photos or running applications has different animations. The application is naturally heavier, and the inertia of flipping is greater in this case. Different elements have different weights in the operating system. Okay, if you've watched up to this point and you're still interested, you can click on the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on such videos. But now I'm going to tell you the most tragic thing. Have you ever thought that the animations in the iOS are, well, too smooth? I also thought for a long time that this was such a sectarian suggestion, but it turned out to be the case. There are 2 points here. Firstly, Apple has always tried to minimize the delay between touch and interface response. It has a touch sensor with a frequency of 120 Hz. This is already important. Moreover, in all the latest iPhones, the speed of the scrolling is still faster than in most Android devices. Even in the OnePlus 7 Pro, about 40 milliseconds versus 59 milliseconds. But this is rather an exception to Android. In Android, the problem was so urgent that for a long time they could not make a normal application like a piano synthesizer, because the time between pressing a key and the sound was not satisfactory. By the way, the problem was fixed, starting with Android 7. But the main thing that you and I should remember is that the response time of the system really matters. And secondly, my favorite, in addition to such straightforward things as the reduction of response time, Apple uses other cheating and maybe ingenious ways to get us to stick to our devices. Look, when an object moves very quickly across the screen and the display shows it at a frequency of 30, well, or even 60 Hz, then the eye actually notices it. What to do? So, to get rid of this, the mechanism of interframe blur works by default, that is, motion blur or motion stretch, depending on the animation. As an example, you can see how the ball is strobing on the left, it is closer to animation in iOS, and how objects are moving in the middle, and on the right, it is closer to the animation in full. In fact, I carried out several slow motion tests and found out that Android can already do similar things. For example, when flipping through news feeds. But the difference is is especially clearly visible on the iPad. And it's not that it has a screen refresh rate of 120 Hz. Pay attention to the blurred frames when flipping through the pages for comparison. This is how a similar process looks on OnePlus 7 Pro, where the refresh rate is close to 90 Hz. The difference is more than noticeable. That is, once again, during the animation, iOS does not just move icons from left to right, frame by frame, it draws additional frames with blurred images so that we have a feeling of smoothness. I can feel the chairs heating up under the Android fans and under me too. But what do I want to say? I want to say that thanks to such paranoid attention to detail that Apple has been showing for the last years to its operating system iOS, we have not just a system that is convenient to use, which solves tasks, switches between applications, makes copy-pasting, and so on, but we have an operating system that you enjoy interacting with and at some kind of childish tactile level. And I think that many who have used iOS, especially its latest versions, will agree with me on this. And yes, many of these approaches are adapted and applied by Android. It invents many approaches of its own. But in this video, I wanted to talk about the fundamental differences of the iOS, the fundamental differences of its interface and the approach to this interface. The main point is what? The fact is that not only the speed of work, the time it takes to launch an application, or the cuteness of icons determines our interaction with operating systems, smartphones, and tablets. And the way these interactions are thought out, the way animations are designed, and the way we observe them. I hope it was interesting. That was another piece of unique content on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss such videos. It is very interesting for us to figure out and tell you some non-obvious details of everything related to gadgets and technologies. I'm Boris Vidensky for Droider. See you in the future.